Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. We are continuing our discussion about morale and how to practically increase it in your organization. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I'm Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today. I very much appreciate it. All right, we have been talking about morale. This is a huge topic, so I wanted to make sure that we give it its due diligence. I believe this is part 5, maybe part 6. So as a quick recap, we were talking about the importance of high morale in your workplace. This is kind of a counterbalance to my previous segments about things that are done to kill morale in a workplace. So I wanted to make sure that everyone that wanted it had these practical steps, things that you could, no kidding, put on your to-do list that will have an impact for the positive on morale in your overall team. And as a recap, if you have not listened to the previous episodes, please take a moment to go back, and because this is what I would consider a building block technique of things you should do, maybe not necessarily in order, but certainly be cognizant of the steps you're taking in relation to the impact it is having on your team and their willingness to receive these types of things, all right? So first of all, we talked about connecting personally with your team members, and you can do this primarily, if you're not already, by learning names and remembering names. That is critical. Second was getting feedback from your team, both on the big issues and the small issues, and having that be a continual process. And then esteem, which comes back to recognition, but not so much the formal kind, employee of the quarter, employee of the year type stuff, but more the, on the spot. When you see somebody going above and beyond or being excellent, make sure you are recognizing them and showing them that esteem as their leader or boss. And then we talked about like those fun events, right? Whether they be monthly, quarterly, anything of that nature. I would probably argue that anything more frequent than monthly may not be the best idea, because one, that takes a lot of time potentially to plan these things. It could be expensive, but you don't want to wear people out. If people want to get together more than that because they're becoming friends and they're building this great culture, they will certainly do that and coordinate that on their own. But as a kind of a official, quote unquote, official function of your office, probably monthly would be the right frequency to do that type of an event. And just understand that is really a building block event. As far as how many people show up for the first one may not be ideal and may not be what you're looking for, but keep at it and keep promoting it and keep making sure that people understand that no strings attached, and this is really just for connections and having fun and letting loose. All right. And then we talked about free lunch, right? Whether that's in recognition of some massive effort of the team, or in preparation of some upcoming challenge that's about to happen, or really just an excuse to get together and relax and enjoy each other's company and learn more about each other. And this could be anything from the no kidding formal, several $100s a head type of a lunch or dinner, down to the, hey, I ordered a couple 10-foot subs from Subway, however that suits your culture and that you're trying to build there, and your budget. And then schedule. We spent, I think two and a half episodes on schedule, and I won't recap my whole story that I went through, because that was a very significant challenge and moment in my life, and certainly in my leadership journey. But I highly encourage you to go back and listen to that episode if you have not already. Get out of it what you can, but my main points I was trying to make is there's always ways to improve a schedule. And then when you do, and if you find a smoking awesome way, there will be pushback, and it might not make sense to you, but just understand that there will be a level of pushback from some people. Some personalities just don't like good ideas, okay? All right, so we're going to continue with our practical steps, and the next one I want to talk about is being transparent with your team. And this applies really to a couple different levels of transparency. One is certainly overall in the company, like, hey, we're not doing so well. Our revenue is down because our costs have gone way up. We actually have some friends that run a Chick-fil-A, and they were just talking about they've been the busiest that they've ever been. Here it is in early April 2022. Restaurants are opening and all that kind of stuff, right? The post-COVID ridiculousness. And they said, we are the busiest we've ever been, but our revenues are way down because the costs of all their supplies, of all their, products, of their labor, like everything is way up. So, here you've got a company that's doing way more sales, right? Way more transactions, but their actual profits and revenues are way down just because of that bottom line has risen so far up. And those are things that mostly are out of their control, right? There's only so many manufacturers that provide the products to a Chick-fil-A, okay? But it's important to be transparent with people, especially when it comes down to raise time. Maybe you've got an employee that has been with you for a long time and they're like, hey, I'm asking for a raise because I've been doing XYZ and really good work, and they probably deserve a raise and you want to give them a raise, but you need to be transparent with them and say, hey man, nothing would please me more than to be able to give you a raise. However, our revenues are way down and we're actually making less as a company than we were last year or the year before due to, the economy, whatever the case may be. But the importance of it is transparency, and just rather than just saying, I'm the boss and no, you can't have a raise, and not explaining that to them, especially when it's something of that nature that is out of your control. But then also on the positive end of being transparent of like, hey everybody, we just had the best quarter of our lives, and because of that, X, Y, and Z. The results of that transparency and what you're going to do with that, because they may see like, well, wait a minute, we just closed this $100 million client, and supposedly in their minds they're like, this company's flush with cash. Why am I not getting a big fat bonus? Why is this not trickling down to me at my employee level? And that can, really affect that culture and that perception. Versus if you're transparent and say, yeah, we did close this $100 million client and, we did get this big chunk of cash, but we're using that to invest in, whatever it could be, software development, it could be a new building or, advertising to get more clients, whatever the case may be. It's important that if you are trying to build this culture of buy-in from your employees at every level, you need to be transparent with that, because everyone has perceptions that they create on their own based on the data that they're given. And if they're not given any data, they're gonna fill it with something. And kind of human nature is most people will fill it with something bad or something negative. And you really want to be transparent in how you interact with your employees and your teammates in what you tell them. And this is really double critically important, super critically important when you're dealing with challenges in your company, okay? And certainly there are companies right now that are dealing with challenges. We've got inflation and wars going on and pandemics still trying to be shoved down our throats and all that good stuff. Transparency is very, very important to the morale of your company, because as you have that transparency, it imparts a level of trust from you as the leader onto your teammates, and they kind of maybe not immediately recognize it, but it's felt, right? Like, oh, there's Jeff up there as our CEO, and he just had this kind of talk. And you can't, okay, side note here, you can't just do it in an email. You can't just be like, hey everybody, I'm under indictment because of XYZ, but it's totally false. You can't do that. You have to be, going back to point number one, you have to be personally connected to these people and have it, and it could be, as a mass meeting, certainly, but you don't want it to be so disconnected, especially if it's something that's a challenge or bad news in your company. All right? So transparency, make sure you write on your list, be transparent. Write down right now 3 things that you are, maybe not purposely, maybe not intentionally, but this is information that would be helpful to your employees, to your team members and your coworkers, that if they knew that information that you're thinking about right now, it would change how they interact with you, it would change how they interact with the company and all those things, okay? So I would encourage you to think of those, maybe 3 items that you could bring up at the next meeting that could have to do with long-term plans, where your direction is that you're thinking of taking the company, all those things, and then getting that feedback. Cool? All right. And then we want to go to going back to, I touched on it here with the transparency of you are lending trust to your team members. You are here, if you think of the pyramid kind of motif of you are at the top as the leader, you're the one in charge. You are lending trust and authority down to your team members. And by showing them that you trust them, you are delegating responsibility to those that have earned it. Okay, and there's two sides of this coin. Delegation is an important part. If you want to grow in your business, you understand that you're one person as the leader. You can't do everything. You have to be able to have a team around you, and you have to be able to delegate parts of your authority and different parts, different people for different reasons, in order to get whatever your company's mission is accomplished. You should understand this, okay? If you don't understand this, we're probably going to talk about this more in future episodes, and I think I've touched on it in past episodes, is you have to be able to delegate authority and give up that authority, right? This is anti-micromanager type of talk, to trusted team members, all right? And by doing that, again, you are lending that trust, and you're doing this exercise of faith in them that you trust them to do whatever it is that you're delegating them to do, or that responsibility that you're delegating them to. Now, the other thing is they have to earn it, certainly. Okay, there's a level, even if it's a new employee, through the interview process, you have built a level of trust that you are, by hiring them to do a position or do a job, you are delegating the authority of getting that job done. Certainly if you're hiring other managers, right, you're delegating part of your authority to do, manage that department head. Certainly, like my commander, going back to our previous scheduling story, he had delegated authority to me to implement this schedule change that I had brought to him as an idea. I did not, as the flight commander, the middle manager, have the authority to just blatantly change the schedule however I wanted to. I needed to get his permission, and because I had proven myself trustworthy, and I knew what I was doing, I had a plan, he delegated that authority to me. But the other side of this is properly training that person. You can't just say, oh, hey, Jeff over there, I know you've been our forklift driver for years and years and years, but because you're such a great forklift driver, you are so trustworthy, you show up on time, you're honest, you are full of integrity, I'm going to make you the head of our HR department. Like, that doesn't work, right? You should be able to see and understand that there's a disconnect there. So they may be completely trustworthy and capable of handling responsibility in general because they've proven it in this area. That does not mean that they are a good choice for this other area. And the missing component is that training aspect. And now, of course, that was an extreme example, right? From a forklift driver to an HR representative, a totally different mission set and different skill set. But the point being is, you have to have some process in place where you've trained them to be able to handle that new authority they've been given, to be able to handle those new responsibilities that they are in charge of. Okay, you can't just be like, yep, I super trust him, and then it's that fire and forget, right? Like, point a gun, boom, and then start walking the other direction with full faith that that bullet is going where you want it to go. You really need to get into this training aspect of it and this qualification piece to understand that you're not doing, certainly not yourself a service, but you are doing that person that you are delegating that responsibility to a massive disservice if you are not providing the appropriate training for them to be successful at it, right? Because nobody likes doing a job that they, one, have no idea how to do, and two, maybe not enjoy, and three, they feel, they go from this high of like, hey, I'm a really good, whatever worker, and now I'm not as good as this anymore, and I don't have the job satisfaction because I'm so ill-equipped for this. So training, and that's certainly initial as well as ongoing. And that is, again, part of you being the leader. You are responsible for the growth and upbringing and training and development of your people. And certainly the most of the people you are delegating pieces of your responsibility and trust to. All right, so there was a couple more. To be fair, I've got two more I want to talk about, two more practical steps to round out our list. And we'll do that in our last and final episode here coming up tomorrow. I hope this has been helpful to you. I've greatly enjoyed talking about this because, again, I think morale is such a huge linchpin to any organization and how it's treated and how it's attacked, and what level of energy is given to, because again, this is the big domino that will put a lot of the other things in place for you. All right, so thank you so much for joining me. Drop me a line anytime at kalehouserleadership.com. I will shoot you a response as soon as I am able, and I would love to continue this discussion with you. We'll talk to you tomorrow. No matter where you're at in the world, have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.